Swifter, how about a helping hand with a helper struct full of helper functions? We're going to create a reusable location notification manager helper struct. We'll give a bit more background on types versus instances. We're going to cover instance methods versus type methods. And we're going to create a type method with a static keyword. Let's get at it, you code monster. Now we've still got a lot of code in the controller that's specific to handling notifications. We've got three functions. We've got authorize notifications, set notifications, and set calendar notifications. Can we take these functions out of the to-do list view controller and write more modular code? Yes, we can. And by doing so, we should be able to create a reusable chunk of code that we can then use in any future app that needs local notifications. Now we're going to create a helper struct. We've never done this before. It'll be a struct without any properties, just methods, meaning functions, and it's going to hold methods that are standard to any local notification. So since all notifications need to get user authorization, the authorized notification should work the same in any app. We're going to put that in this new helper struct. Also, since notifications are standard iOS format, creating a new calendar notification should be the same in any app also, so we can put that set calendar notifications in our new helper struct. Now the part that is going to be unique to our app and is not reusable is set notifications. Because this function takes the stuff from the to-do items model and it creates notifications for each to-do item. But we can move the call to set notifications to to-do items and then directly call from there our set calendar notification function in our new generic helper struct, this one called local notifications manager. So essentially we're going to take all of the notifications out of our to-do list view controller and move them into custom structs and class types. Sounds good. More modular code, a reusable notification manager, a less massive view controller. Let's do it. Now, there are lots of different ways to organize your code. Many developers who are using MVC will create subfolders inside of their project navigator to hold files for model, controller, view, and helper separately. We don't have that many files in our app, so for now, let's just put our new helper struct, this local notification manager we're about to create, above our model just under scene delegate. So I'll click on scenedelegate.swift, choose File, New, File. We'll create a new Swift file. We'll give this file the name Local Notification Manager. Click Create. Now, since this is going to deal with the user notifications, we'll first import user notifications, and below that we'll define our struct. We'll give it the name in upper camel case, Local Notification Manager, open and close curlies, and this is where we're going to be able to put our functions in. So let's go back to To-Do List View Controller. Let's grab our authorized local notifications, cut that out with a Command X, go back into our new function, Local Notifications Manager, paste it in here, first function migrated to the helper class. Now let's return to To-Do List View Controller. Hey, we're getting an error for authorized notifications. Now that's because the authorized notifications function is no longer in this class. We just moved that function into the new local notification manager struct. Now to access the methods that are inside of a struct, we usually just create a variable for that struct and then use dot notation off of the variable. But there is another alternative. Now before we continue, let's clarify some key concepts and terms. So a type is sort of like a blueprint. It describes a thing that our Swift code can create, and by convention, types are written in upper camel case. So when we talk about types, we're talking about things like, a string and how a string is described or represented, a double, how a double is represented, or we can create custom types. We've already done that with our custom struct. When we created a to-do item, we said, hey, a to-do item is going to have a name, notes, reminder, and other properties. Now, an instance is the data holding object that's created from the type or the blueprint. So these are usually variables or constants, and they're written in lower camel case. Now, by the way, blueprint is not an official Swift term, but I think it's a pretty good metaphor. The type is like a blueprint. It's an abstract representation. The instance is sort of like the house that's built from the blueprint, and it can hold things, kind of like a house can hold people and furniture. Well, an instance can hold data. Now, the terminology can get a bit tricky in Swift because an object is an instance of a class, but an instance of a struct is still called a struct. Now, normally, if we define a type with a method, and remember, a method is a func inside of a type, then we need to create an instance before we can access that method. So we need to initialize a variable of the type before we can access that function using dot notation. So consider the struct I've created named timeHelper. Want to access the print time function inside of it? Well, you need to create an instance of timeHelper, kind of like I've done with my timeHelper here. I've created a variable of type timeHelper called my timeHelper. That's its instance, and then we can call print time from my timeHelper. Now, this way we've been using is referred to as accessing an instance method. You create an instance before you access the method or function using dot notation. But there is another way of doing this that doesn't require an instance. It's called a type method, and it's created using the static keyword before the func keyword. Sometimes you'll hear folks just refer to this as static functions. Now, when you create a type method using static, you don't need to create an instance first. You can just give the type name in upper camel case, and then via dot notation, you can call the method or the function. So in this example, I've got the word static before the func, and then down here, I've said in upper camel case, time helper, which is the name of the type, but it's not a variable holding any kind of time helper instance. And I say dot print time, and the function will operate properly and it will print the current time. Now, why is this useful? Well, type methods or static functions, whatever you want to call them, they're especially useful for helper functions when we don't need any data associated with the function. And that's the case here. We don't want to create a new variable just to authorize notifications. So we'll add static to our authorized notification func inside that new struct file we just created, and that will be a type function. Let's go ahead and do that now. We can go back to our local notification manager. We'll just put the word static in front of func, and this way when we return to to-do list view controller, instead of having to create an object of type local notification manager, we can simply refer to the type's name in upper camel case, local notification manager, there it is. And to make sure that Xcode knows about the updates I just made, I need to do a shift command K, use dot notation. I can see authorized local notifications is here, press return. I'm going to highlight in backspace over the old authorized local notifications method. So now let's build and run, and we can see right down below in the console it says notification authorization granted. So our first refactoring out to our helper class has worked. Let's do the rest. Back in Xcode, I'm going to hide the console, stop the executing app, then highlight set calendar notifications and Command X to cut that out, return to our new local notification manager class, paste it in under the previous function we just added. So now we've got two functions in this helper class. Now we want this to be a type method or a static function. So we're going to add the static keyword just before the func in set calendar notification. Let's return to to-do list view controller, find set notifications, highlight this whole function, cut it out, just clean things up a little bit in here, and then let's head back to to-do items.swift. Remember, this is the part that's more specific to our model, so we need to add this as a call inside of to-do items. So I'm going to paste this function just below my load data function. Now to-do items has three methods in here. I see a bunch of errors show up. And you know what? I'll just move my load data function up top because I call load data before save data. You don't have to do that. It just helps me think about things a little bit more logically. And then we see we've got a bunch of errors down here in set notifications. Now the reason why we're getting these errors is we're referring to-do items. Now to-do items was an object that existed in the previous class in to-do list view controller.swift, but to-do items isn't inside of this. We are inside of the class to-do items. So everything that has this function is already an object of type capital to-do items, so we don't have to refer to the to-do items in front. In fact, if we scroll up here, we can see each object that's created using this class has an items array in it. So we can get rid of the to-do items.items array and just refer to items array. That's going to allow the object to say, hey, look inside my part, my property that says items array. That's what I want you to work with. So let's do that. We'll scroll back down to set notifications. We'll change right in the guard statement here, the to-do items.items array to just items array. Oh, and we're also getting some errors because we haven't imported our user notifications. So let's go up and add import user notifications. That gives us access to all of the data structures and methods to work with user notifications. So if we scroll back down, we see that error has gone away. Now we can go back into the for loop. We're going to replace to-do items.items array with just items array dot count. We need to do the same thing in the if statement, so I'll highlight to-do items dot and backspace over that. Let's see, we've also got a couple of other errors in here too, so we'll make those changes. In this line down here where we set the notifications ID, we've got to remove to-do items dot, and also in the line above that where we set up this constant to-do item, we've got to remove to-do items dot. Now we're still getting an error down here when we call set calendar notifications, and can you figure out why? Well, set calendar notifications isn't in this class. It's actually in our local notifications manager struct, that new helper struct that we created. So in order to access set calendar notification, which is now a type method, we've got to put the type method in front of this and then add a dot for dot notation. So we'll say local notification manager, all upper camel case, dot, and we can see that we've got this method in here in code completion. And I won't re-add this with code completion because the call that I've got to this method otherwise works perfectly. So I'll just make sure that upper camel case local notification manager dot is in front of set calendar notification, but that's all I need. Now there's one thing we're not doing. We're not calling set notifications. If we go back to to-do list view controller, we can see that we called set notifications from save data. And we did that after we called to-do items.save data. Well, why don't we highlight set notifications here, cut this out, go back into to-do items, find the save data function, and we can put set notifications right in the bottom of save data after do try catch just before the closing curly in the save data function. And so now, once we've saved data, regardless of whether we've done it properly or we've got an error, we'll go ahead and we'll set up our notifications. Good! We can go ahead and build and run now. Let's see if this works. No errors. Console says notification authorization granted. Let's go up and set up a notification and make sure that those are working too. So I'll click on my first item in here. I'll set the notification to go off in, just a minute. And then I'll fast forward to make sure that this does go off. And you know what, while we're waiting, I'll set up another one to go off just a minute after the first one. In fact, I'll go home, I'll go to the lock screen. Whoa, and fast forwarding we see item 1 went off. What about that second item? I'll fast forward. In fact, let's swipe to open the app so we can check to see if we get an in-app alert. Oh, that's looking good too. So we have successfully refactored our code into something which is far more MVC. Even better, we learned how to create a helper struct, how to use a type method, a static function. Now you have this file, local notification manager.swift, that can be used to call and set up any local notification managers you need in future apps. You did it. Swifter, you're getting skilled. Few software engineering concepts in there. Keep at it.